Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank both of you for your service and your testimony. Secretary Becerra, great to see you again. It's great to serve with you in the House. And this is just by way of thanking you and the President for the requests you put forward on child care. In the state of Maryland, child care is more expensive than in-state tuition at the University of Maryland. And that obviously puts an incredible strain on family budgets. And it obviously reduces, as you've testified today, the ability of people to enter the workforce if they're having to pay more in childcare in some instances than they're making, or certainly not making all of that work together. So the request that the President has made will help 5,900 providers in the state of Maryland and serve approximately 172,000 children. This is a really important part of the President's request. Secretary Mayorkas, I know we've covered a lot of territory, so just a couple things as well to thank you to begin with. H-2B visas, thank you for using your authority to expand those numbers. It's especially welcome in Maryland with respect to our seafood processors who simply cannot function without H-2B visa workers. And of course, that hurts our entire economy as well. And I know Senator Murkowski and I have been working on this for a long time to actually get a seafood carve out, but we appreciate your efforts in this regard. You and I have talked about it many times. I also want to salute your involvement in the White House Worker Protection Task Force, which is critical to establishing comprehensive safeguards for American and foreign workers. My colleagues have mentioned it, but the nonprofit security grant program was already essential, more important now than ever with respect to the rise in anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim attacks. And we need those funds to make sure that we provide the security to protect people against hate crimes in all their ugly forms. And that is included in your budget, right?
Yes, it is, Senator.
I also want to thank you for dispelling the myth that we hear all the time that fentanyl is crossing the border through illegal points of entry as opposed to through points of entry, coming in on trucks and other vehicles. And you have funding in this budget to improve the screening so that we can find and confiscate fentanyl when it crosses our border. Is that right?
Yes, it is, Senator.
Now, I would like to ask you about some of the measures you and the Biden administration have taken with respect to legal avenues for migration that can dissuade individuals from embarking on dangerous and unlawful journeys across the border, and the benefits of providing migration through official ports of entry. The administration has achieved some success in decreasing the incidence of individuals crossing unlawfully between ports of entry. If you could talk briefly about what policies or actions you credit for the notable reduction in approximately 200,000 migrant arrests made outside points of entry as compared to 1 year ago.
Senator, our model is, as you reference, to build safe, lawful, and orderly pathways to cut the smuggling organizations out of the equation. They are ruthlessly exploiting the vulnerable. To build those lawful pathways that enable us to screen and vet individuals before they arrive at the border, and then to deliver consequences for those who do not avail themselves of those pathways, but indeed arrive irregularly in between our ports of entry. And quite frankly, we achieved a milestone in negotiating with Venezuela its acceptance of repatriation flights in furtherance of that consequence regime. So it's really those two parts that make a whole in the approach that we are pursuing.
And have you seen, compared to last year, more people accessing that approach?
We have, and we also have, as a process within that model, we have the CBP One app, which is a technological innovation that allows people to make an appointment and arrive safely at our ports of entry and allows us to screen and vet them in an orderly way as well.
Thank you. Thank you both for your testimony.
Senator Britt. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you both secretaries for being here today. I want to start by acknowledging the sentiments of many of my colleagues about the urgent need for border security, for policy changes, and to changes in interior enforcement. I just want to take a minute to ask a couple of questions. I'm going to start, Secretary Mayorkas, when you testified on March 29th before the Homeland Security Subcommittee regarding President's FY24 budget proposal for your department, there were 6,610 encounters at the southern border. On Monday, that number was 8,500, which is 8.5 times more than the 1,000 daily encounters that your former boss, Secretary Jay Johnson, said would constitute a crisis. I know on that day, on March 29th, you did not say that we had a crisis. My question for you is today, do you believe that we have a crisis before us?
Senator, let me make this point that is very, very important because I've been asked, would I describe it as a disaster? Would I describe it as a crisis? I do not diminish the significance and the complexity of the challenge. No, if I may.
Well, I only have 5 minutes and I only have 3 left. So is it a crisis, yes or not? I guess I'm going to move on. Secretary Bashara, do you think that we have a child care crisis, affordable child care crisis in this country?
Senator, I don't think there's any doubt that we have.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, so, but this is an emergency, Secretary Mayorkas. It is an emergency, though.
It is urgent that we receive the funding for our personnel and our tools to enhance the security of our border.
I think we just need to use the words "it's true." It's an emergency. That's what this administration said. They put it in an emergency supplemental request. So let's treat it as such. Moving on, you did have a record year, though, in other ways. You put more people on the non-detained docket than previous 2 administrations combined in the entirety of their terms in office. This administration had near low levels of removal and detention beds filled, and this administration set another record for encounters on the southwest border. And as my colleague from New Hampshire mentioned, there was a 500% increase in the northern border in a 5-county area that impacts the area that she represents. When we talk about this, we don't need to manage the border, as it says in one of your requests here. We actually need to secure it. So in doing that, this administration has kind of had different positions, and I want to clarify it. Do you believe that a border wall is part of the answer? Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay, so I have a trouble reconciling that with your the rule that you signed and issued on October 5th, where you said construction of physical barriers on the border of the United States would, in fact, prevent unlawful entries.
Senator, so if I may explain, the Congress mandated that we employ
But you didn't actually have to issue a rule. We could have done that. And one more thing, this administration and your department, the Department of Homeland Security, issued a contract for $500,000 in September of 2001 for the purchase and installation of a wall around this president's beach house. So you'll do know walls work. You do know they're part of the solution. You do know they're part of creating security. But for whatever reason, you feel like the American people are beneath that. And I think that it is incredibly frustrating. I only have a minute left, so I want to move to interior enforcement. When you're looking at the non-detained docket, I'm concerned about the growth of the number of people in the interior who are waiting years, if not decades, to have their cases heard before an immigration judge. So particularly if you look at this, the ICE officers, do we have the number of officers needed? Do they have the support that they are needed in order to manage this caseload of 6.3 million individuals and rising? So now with 40 seconds left, do you, when we have, let's see, the 1 million people that have had due process and need to be removed, do you believe that the ICE officers have what they need to be able to remove those?
Senator, as our supplemental reflects, we need more enforcement and removal operations officers. We need more support staff for them. Despite the constraint of inadequate resources, we have removed aggravated felons at a higher rate than the prior administration. We have interdicted.
I only have 17 seconds left, but you've only requested 45 more ICE officers. And the truth is, when you look at the 6,000 officers that we have and the 6.5 million people that are in the interior and the 1 million people that need to be removed. You're asking each of these agents to essentially, you've got to remove about 167 people if we were going to remove all 1 million in a year. We've got to be serious about what we're requesting. Y'all requested this 2 years ago, and either you aren't serious about it or my colleagues across the aisle didn't want to fund it, because those 45 officers that you requested did not make it into the omnibus bill. I am hopeful that we not only have the 45 that were requested, but we have much more. They have an important job to do, and we need to make sure they have the resources and the officers to do it. Thank you.
I would be pleased to speak with you, Senator, further about our supplemental request, because the data that you just cited is inaccurate, but I'll follow up with you separately.
Thank you.
Senator Manchin. Talk about it now.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank both of you for this hearing. And I think it's wonderful that we have both of you here, and I want to thank you both for your service. Most difficult subject, as you know. It's been basically a challenge for as long as I've lived, and was cognizant of the immigration problems that we have. So I'm going to put it in layman's terms. I have people asking me, they say, you know, when we go to a football game or I go to a concert and I'm hoping I can get a ticket and get in, and they tell me, I'm sorry, all the seats are sold. So to simply put it, we seem to be filled up. Our stadium's filled up. Do you have the ability, or can you basically say, wait a minute, with all the laws and rules and regulations that we're basically working at the borders, who has this right or that right, or come in, asylum and all that, can we just not say we're filled up right now and we cannot have any more seats? Is that possible? Do you have that flexibility?
Senator, we do not have that authority under the law.
So we have to change the law to give you the authority to basically say, whether it's a pause or stop, whatever it would take, that we cannot, you know, basically humanitarianly handle the people we're sending into the country right now. And I'm going to go into a few other things too, because West Virginians are just asking questions. We're far removed from the border. My dear friend Senator Sinema is right on the front line, so we sympathize with all of our frontline senators. But they're saying, all the people that came in illegally and everything, and they're getting all these benefits, can't they get just a work visa like you did with Venezuela at a certain time you cut it off, to make them earn and pay for their stay while they're here, pay their taxes until we're adjudicated, and see if they really have earned the right to be here or not, but at least be productive while they're here? Is that possible, or does that take a law change?
Senator, it depends how one has arrived in the United States. If, in fact, one has arrived under our lawful pathways, then one is eligible immediately for work authorization. For example, under the parole program for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans. For example, under the CBP-1 app. If one has arrived irregularly in between the ports of entry, then one is eligible for work authorization 180 days after one has.
Why 180?
That is the statutory requirement.
So it's a statute. Then I'm just looking for things that we could change to make all of our lives better and make sure that makes some common sense. So what we're saying is that there's more of them that have come here looking to get a status that allows them to stay here or not. But I'm understanding that 80 to 90% of the people coming claiming asylum, even though we go through the process and send them somewhere, end up basically not meeting that condition of asylum. And the other thing, one other thing I'll put with it, I'm so sorry. We talk fast as we can. When we call it third party, okay, the third country processing, what they've explained to me, we're playing defense on the 1 yard line. Any way the ball crosses that goal line, that's a touchdown. Now, if we were playing defense on the 20-yard line, that means third party going into those countries, stopping that, making sure we qualify that would make a big difference. Does that take policy change also?
We have implemented that policy change within the constraints of a broken system. So we have set up secure mobility offices in various countries as triage centers to see whether individuals could qualify for relief in the United States. And if indeed we have made a determination that they do, then we're able to bring them safely and in an orderly way. Yeah. I agree with your
And here's the thing, the overview is this, is that, you know, everybody wants to blame whatever administration's in power, that's who we're going to blame. The bottom line is we're trying to fix things, and I know you've been getting beat up pretty good here, but the bottom line is, sir, I got faith in you. I know you have the knowledge. We need that knowledge, and we need to help both Secretary Becerra with all his challenges too, because they go hand in hand, your two jobs. We need you to give us the direction of how we can make sure that this simple changes make a difference. People in my state are very, very red. They're very pro-Trump, okay? And I respect wherever their philosophical beliefs. I've just told them this: you're okay to have your opinion, any opinion you want. You just cannot create your own facts to support that opinion. And I want to make sure they have the facts, and I want to make sure that we have a cure. And if you'll work with us versus just condemning it, we can fix it. And that's what's happening in this country. We're putting policy and politics ahead of the people. The people are the last things in consideration with the basically deals that we're making here or the laws that we're making. 2013, as a piece of legislation that most of us were involved, we're here in 2013, was a bipartisan bill. It would have been tremendous. Because of politics in the House, the Republican, John Boehner, our friend, could not put it on the floor or didn't think he could. We don't want that to happen. So these little fixes I'm asking you about, the stadium's full. Sorry, can't come. Okay? You're going to have to work if you're here until you're waiting to get adjudicated. Okay? You're going to pay for yourself and pay for your taxes. You're going to be productive. We're not going to get handouts. You're not going to be here 6 months, because I can tell you, if you're getting 6 months of handouts, you'll want another 6 months and another 6 months on top of that. That's what they're telling me. And if I can help you, sir, I am here, and I'll do whatever I can. Thank you both for your service.
Thank you. Senator Sinema.
Thank you, Chair Murray and Vice Chair Collins, for holding this hearing, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. The southwest border is in crisis. Arizona continues to bear the brunt of the federal government's failures on the border, and the situation is only getting worse. Since September 12th of this year, over 14,000 migrants have been released into small communities across Arizona. These small communities do not have the resources or transportation options to handle migrant releases. In Bisbee, a town of about 5,000 people without bus service to either Tucson or Phoenix, local leaders turned the council chambers into an emergency shelter so that migrants would no longer be dumped in a grocery store parking lot. So now is not the time for partisan rhetoric. Our system isn't working. Arizonans and migrants are suffering. Our communities are in crisis. Dangerous drugs like fentanyl are killing thousands of Americans each year. And we have to reject the partisan echo chamber and work together to make meaningful, lasting changes to solve these issues, to secure our border, keep Arizona families safe, and ensure that migrants are treated fairly and humanely. Secretary Mayorkas, in February of 2022, DHS formed the Southwest Border Coordination Center to coordinate planning, operations, engagement, and interagency support. While the SBCC didn't do nearly enough to help with resource coordination, they did relay helpful information to my office, and they answered questions in weekly meetings. But last week, my staff was informed that the SBC is standing down. These weekly meetings are ending, which is making it more difficult for my staff to get updates on the situation in the Yuma and Tucson sectors. This is especially concerning given the increasing number of ongoing migrant releases in small southern Arizona communities. Will you commit to restarting these weekly meetings between CBP and my office so we can get these regular updates and ensure that our questions are answered in a timely manner?
Senator, I look forward to working with you, because the Southern Border Coordinating Center was ended, but we are institutionalizing the means of communicating with local jurisdictions. We are institutionalizing further all of the mission sets that the SBCC was performing. So I will follow up with you and get back to you immediately, because the communication is key with communities impacted by the influx of individuals at the border.
Okay, we'll follow up because we need a meeting every week. The current levels of migration are unprecedented and unsustainable. We've got to send a clear message to potential migrants that we will be fair and humane, but that we will secure our border and enforce our laws. Many countries are refusing to take back their nationals even after they've gotten a final removal order from the U.S. These recalcitrant countries undermine our ability to enforce our immigration laws. So what is DHS doing to get these countries to accept their nationals back? And what authorities do you need from us in Congress to more effectively compel the countries to get their citizens returned to them?
The challenge of recalcitrant jurisdictions, Senator, has been one that is decades long. I worked on it back in 2009, and quite frankly, when I was a federal prosecutor in the 1990s, it was a challenge then. And we are working, not just the Department of Homeland Security alone, but working very closely with the Department of State in an all-of-administration effort to get recalcitrant jurisdictions to accept the repatriation of their nationals. In fact, we reached a milestone in that regard with respect to Venezuela, where a few weeks ago we negotiated an agreement successfully, and Venezuela agreed to take back individuals from its country who did not qualify for relief in the United States. So this is a persistent challenge and one that we are attacking persistently.
But Secretary, what do you need from Congress? What additional authority would you need from us in order to be able to return these people more rapidly?
It is really a matter of international relations. But Senator, let me pose that question to our experts and get back to you.
The Family Expedited Removal Management Program, which is called FIRM, ensures that migrant families undergo their credible fear interviews in a timely manner. We know that the stated goal is to remove families within 30 days if they don't articulate a credible fear. How many family units have been enrolled in the FIRM, and how many have been removed to their country of origin? And how many days does the process take?
I will get that data to you. I can share with you the top line that we have succeeded in removing more family members than the prior administration, and I will get that data to you.
The last few months have shown that many of our ports of entry don't have the necessary staffing or infrastructure to process the very high number of migrants that are coming in through our ports of entry, while also facilitating trade and travel. What additional resources is DHS putting in place at ports of entry to ensure that trade and travel continues while migrants are being processed?
Senator, it's such an important issue that you raise, and one that we have spoken about previously. Our supplemental funding request, which is so urgently needed, seeks, I think it's $240 million for 1,000 new CBP officers from the Office of Field Operations, which work our ports of entry.
And Chairwoman, I know that my time has expired. One last comment I'll make. It's obvious that DHS needs additional resources to help this process move forward. I would encourage the Department of Homeland Security and the administration to also recognize what I think is fairly obvious, which is that policy must be changed in order for us to get control of the situation on the border. The number of migrants who are crossing into just my small state alone every day is 8 to 10 times as much as it was under the Obama administration. Without policy changes, the cartels will continue to decide who enters our country through what ports and what times. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I want to thank all of our colleagues who participated today. I want to thank Secretary Becerra, Secretary Mayorkas. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here today. Senator Collins, would you like to make any closing remarks?
Thank you. First, let me thank you, Chair Murray, for convening this hearing. I want to thank our witnesses. I do feel compelled to correct what I believe is a misimpression that was created in exchanges by two of our members with Secretary Mayorkas regarding fentanyl. What we heard was that 90% of fentanyl is seized at ports of entry. What that doesn't tell you is how much fentanyl is coming in through drones that the cartels use, which Secretary Mayorkas has acknowledged previously, and coming through from gotaways. So I think it's highly misleading to say that all we've got to do to stop fentanyl is to have new technology, which I do support at our ports of entry. The second point I will quickly make is DHS cannot ignore the role that Mexico and China are playing in the fentanyl crisis. The precursors, the pill pressers, are coming from China to the Mexican cartels. So to say that this is mainly Americans that are smuggling it, that 90% comes in through ports of entry, ignores very important factors that paint a different or at least fuller picture.